the divine wants to share that when you feel like you're waiting, there is no waiting. That if you're actually in tune and in sync with the energies around you, there is actually never a moment of waiting. You're always flowing in a direction. There's always a door that's opening. There's always a choice to be made. And so you're constantly in that stream of movement. And as I want to express it, I'm thinking about my life, and I'm thinking that is the truth. There's not a moment of waiting and doing nothing. Something is always moving, because those things that other people think are so subtle are so loud for me. And so when it's loud, yes, it requires action right now. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. I have been really interested in time. I've been channeling a lot about time, shifting timelines, what that means, and experiencing time in different ways. This is one of the big themes that has come up from Lionsgate and since Lionsgate. If you are in Next Level You, the highest frequency tier, which is our tier where we have monthly live channeling and energy healing calls, you heard me talk about this. It was a big theme of our call this last week. And if you're not already a member, then we'll put the link in the show notes or the description below about how to join that, because it is a lot of fun and really powerful. But I was talking a lot about time because it is one of the biggest themes that's coming up right now. And when I'm tapping into what wants to be shared in these spaces, I'm looking at themes that are coming up in the field, which is what's coming up psychically and also what's going to come up literally. And so I notice themes with conversations I'm having. And so one of the things that today when I was meditating, Spirit was talking about has been timing and shifting timelines and what that means. And I started to reflect on a lot of the big conversations I've had in the last few weeks, and I started to piece it all together. And I've had a lot of conversations with people in my life about relationships, with different friends who are single and who are really wanting to attract in their divine life partner. And I had a really similar conversation with a number of people, which was more about when people in my life ask me what the block is, I will tell them exactly what I'm seeing. And for all of the people that I had this conversation with, it was the same answer. And this isn't the answer for everyone, but it was the theme of you need to crank it in. You need to intentionally pull it in. And there's a lot of trusting the universe, which is a really important spiritual lesson. Whenever we're looking at working with energy, you're going to find that the deeper you go into this, two things that seem opposing are both going to be true at different times. All advice isn't good advice all the time. Great advice now could be bad advice later. We're all different, and every situation is different. And so we're here to learn this spiritual principle of surrender and releasing and getting out of the way. And that is one of the most important things for us to learn, because so often we are stuck in these energies of trying to control and micromanage, and we make ourselves bigger than God in that way of I know everything, and if I can just figure out what to do, then I know how to move forward, and man plans and God laughs, that kind of thing. You learn that lesson. The other side of that, though, is that we have to be willing to make choices to say, now is the time. And I had a conversation with a friend about divine timing, and she said, have you talked about this on the podcast? Because I think it would help a lot of people. And I told her, I said, you're waiting for divine timing, but divine timing is actually the last possible moment it can come in. There are so many different energetic entry points and exit points for dynamics in our lives and our lives overall. And there is energetic probability. There is choice. We have agency over, am I going to move now? And so I've shared this before, but one of the things that people often come to me for is, how do I manifest things so quickly? The pace of my life is really fast, not because being faster or slower in terms of pace of your life is better than or worse than. And there are certainly things in my life that have moved really slowly. I look at healing with my body, and it took me 7-8 years of concentrated effort to really learn the lessons that I needed to learn to heal my body, to really get it. And so that felt really slow to me. And I look at most things in my life though, and it moves pretty quickly. And that's because my relationship to time is different than most people's because of how I see and understand energy. I was having an interesting conversation with a friend. Actually, I should get him on the podcast, who is more of an academic and a physicist and very deep in quantum physics. And we had a conversation recently where he was asking a lot about my experiences as a channel and kind of mapping that into the different theories in quantum physics that he knows very well, and just trying to map on personal experience with what he understands scientifically. And he had sent me a couple of white papers he had created and was asking how that mapped onto my experience. And it did really well. And the way that he had described it was, we live in a brick reality and we experience time like a directional arrow, but time doesn't really exist in that way. Time is just a thing. Without our perception of time, time doesn't exist. And if you think about time more like there's consciousness that is outside of this brick reality, and consciousness is, and this isn't technical, but let's say it's plugging into this reality to have an experience with my brain as the interface. So my brain is the interface between consciousness coming into this reality and experiencing a moment. And when my consciousness keeps doing that, that strings together so I have the experience of time. And I'll let that drop where it was, but I'm having this conversation, and I had this conversation with my friend about divine timing being the last possible moment. And this is what just Spirit wanted to tell her, what the divine wanted to tell her. That's the last moment. And she is somebody who certainly moves things along pretty quickly in her life. And she's saying, okay, well, if I'm ready for this person, how do I allow them to come in? And so often we're focused on, what are my blocks to receiving? And that is one really important part of it. But you don't have to be perfectly healed to receive your life partner. You don't have to be perfectly in abundance mindset to make more money. You don't have to be at this end point to start to attract things, because you start to attract things at a different frequency, and that adds to the momentum of that frequency. As I said, that the candle just went out, so that was interesting. And it helps you activate more and more and more of that energy. So if I think about shifting from scarcity to abundance, it wasn't like I did all of this work to go from scarcity to perfect abundance mindset all the time to then start making money. It was, I started to make little shifts and little adjustments, so I was vibrationally available to receiving more abundance, and abundance started to flow in a very practical way that I could feel, and that helped energize and add momentum to more of that. And then that actually helped me along my path of perceiving from abundance mindset more and more and more, so I could get to that other side of the spectrum and keep going down that side of the spectrum. I didn't have to be fully on the other side of the spectrum to receive the opportunity to keep growing. And when you look at something like romantic relationship, which is such a big theme right now, you learn your biggest lessons through connection. An intimate partnership is such a valuable mirror. It is your most intense mirror, to have somebody with you consistently, seeing deeper layers of you more than anybody else. Where with other people, with friends, yeah, they can mirror for you, but then you're going to go home and live your lives, and there's a lot they don't see. When you live with someone, when you're having daily conversations and intimate conversations, they're just inherently seeing pieces of you that other people aren't seeing. Similarly to how family in general might see pieces of you that other people don't see, your friends don't see. And so it brings up other layers. And so the thing is that as long as you're in pursuit of, I need to be at this perfect place vibrationally to receive this thing, you're always going to be waiting, because you've inherently decided that you have to be at an endpoint to receive. You've made that decision with your subconscious and with your energy field. And so we're never going to reach that endpoint, because we're always growing and changing. Energy is naturally always growing and moving and transitioning and changing. And so you always feel stuck. And so part one is realizing that to receive your partner, and maybe it's your divine life partner, maybe it is the next contract that's meant to come in. That's the other thing. As long as I'm committed to, I'm only willing to date my divine life partner, my marriage partner, if there are contracts that must be completed for you to attract that person in, and you're saying, no, I'm unavailable for those, then nothing will move in your life, because the order of things matters. I was pulling cards yesterday for our call, and that message came in so strongly and so loudly, and I felt the depth of that. The order that I'm pulling these cards matters, because when I'm pulling the cards, it's telling me a story. It's telling me about what leads to what leads to what opens up what leads to what. Where do we start and where do we end? What are we experiencing in the middle? And if you look at a tarot card read, for example, I'm sure you can relate to this. You could take the same set of 5 cards and change the order, and it's a completely different meaning, because the order does matter. And the order of our relationships matters. And there are things that are vibrational triggers that shift us into the version of us that can actually become a vibrational match for our divine life partner. And so sometimes we're sitting there thinking, oh, I can do all the work myself to be ready for this person. And the reality is you just can't. There are going to be people that come in that show you parts of yourself, show you things that you desire, that you don't, that you quite simply won't see just on your own. And that is why we need mirrors. That is part one. And that is of how we vibrationally shift to be able to receive, to attract that person. You're assuming we're trying to manifest a divine life partner. The other is sometimes we have contracts that are instruction manual. This has to happen first, then this happens, then this happens, then this happens, because karma has to rebalance. And everybody is different, but that is a thing. And so when you are trying to have someone cut the line, nothing moves, because our experience of time is very much going to be related to, and sometimes we phrase it, how quickly you learn your lessons. It's really how willing am I to engage with what my soul wants to bring forward to me. So how willing am I to engage with life in the sense of jumping into what I'm curious about now, what's coming up for me now. So when there are themes or reflections coming up and I keep saying, no, I don't want to deal with that. I want to focus on this. I'm obsessed with knowing what's going to happen over here. How do I make more money? And all these other themes are coming up. There's stuff going on with your family. There's stuff going on with your health. Oh, I don't want to deal with it. I just want to focus on this. You keep yourself in a stalemate. You keep the energy stuck, because the order matters. We know you're trying to get here. No one's confused. Your soul is not confused. God is not confused. No one's confused. We know you want to get there. Okay. And this is coming up because this is the first card in the tarot spread, and this is the second one. And so it's saying, okay, for this energy to move, you've got to focus on this and you've got to focus on this. So we have to be willing to take those steps one at a time, understanding that it all energetically connects. These things knock open this, and part of it is a soul contract, and literally just I signed up for the order of this to be this way. The other is karma has to complete for energies to close and for new energies to open up. The other is these things are perfectly designed to position you differently, because what you think you want over here right now for, let's say it's your career, it's going to change when you deal with this relationship stuff, with this family stuff, with this health stuff. So that is a really important foundational thing to understand about allowing your current soul contracts. And we want to force the timing of things. We want to force being with that person right now, and it may or may not be available to you. And that's going to be shown in, is it happening? Is it happening? Is that person unavailable for you? Is that person, you can't feel their energy? Are you chasing that person? Like, what's going on? It's actually not supposed to be that hard. It's not supposed to be that hard. It shouldn't be that hard. When things are meant to be active in your life, they come forward. So that's part one. But part two is a lot of people in this waiting game of the divine will send it when they're meant to, send it when they're meant to. But I want you to really understand this piece of divine timing, the way that people relate to it. I want to be specific with that. I'm talking about what I know people mean when they say divine timing, because everybody has different definitions for everything. And what I would consider divine timing is probably different than what you would consider divine timing, because most people relate to the concept of divine timing as it magically fell into place right then. And so think about it like a vibrational point on the graph. Like, this is when it happened. The way that most people relate to that vibrational point of when the time is, again, is the time when it's the last possible entry or exit point. It's the last possible thing. Now, before that, your intuition, your soul, the universe, energies around you are already moving things to try to encourage you to make a choice. So you have the moment when it's really settled and it's right at the beginning of, I feel like this isn't correct. I should go in a different direction. And that's a possible entry point where you can move the energy and everything will unfold. And let's say that it could happen day one because you listen to that subtle intuitive nudge. But let's say you don't. And you say, I'm going to wait and I'm just going to see what happens. I want to see what happens. So you wait a couple of more days and you have that subtle intuitive nudge. And now there's an argument. There's a disagreement and something is feeling really off. You're really realizing I'm not feeling seen here. And still you're like, well, I'm just going to see how it pans out. I'm going to wait a little bit longer. And it continues until eventually, you know what happens is you get pulled out of that situation. You get ripped out of that situation. You get fired. You get broken up with. And then you meet someone after. And you say that it was divine timing. It was perfect timing because I had just gotten out of this thing. That wasn't the only timing though. That was the universe said, okay, your soul said, I have given this person every indication, every subtle nudge, every energetic nudge, because nothing is coincidence. And I'm trying to give you signals and you just keep missing the signals or avoiding the signals. You're waiting until an explosion happens for it to come in, which is, okay, divine timing. The universe is going to send me a person when it's time. I want you to remember that you have agency over when you're available for something. And as long as you've utilized that agency and that choice, and you have communicated energetically, I'm available now, then the timing of it will be more of what I would consider divine timing from that place. That doesn't mean it's going to happen right now, but that is the energetic signal of, okay, I'm actually available for it to happen now. And if it happens now, great. If it happens tomorrow, great. If it happens in 3 months, great. But I'm available for it whenever it's meant for me. And that is what I consider to be, okay, I'm actually going to open my door to it. And then when we talk about, I want to pull it in, like I'm just going to reel it in like a fish on the line. What does that look like, right? That's hey, universe, I am available now. I would like to call this in as quickly as I can in whatever way is for the highest and best for everybody involved. We're going to make all of those assumptions and requests, but I am going to say I'm ready for what this is going to bring for me. I don't need to be perfectly healed. I am available for being taught lessons when I get there. I'm available for jumping in the deep end and figuring out how to swim in the deep end. And not everybody has to do that. You don't have to do that. But there is a big initiation in that willingness to not always feel ready. And a lot of times people really lean on this, I don't feel ready yet. And I think it's important to get really curious about what that means to you. What does it mean to feel ready? Because typically the time that you fully feel ready, like all parts of your heart, your energy, your mind are on board, is past when you're vibrationally ready. You're so ready, it's again, last possible moment. So this is how we experience time differently. Of the people that you see around you who are moving things along really quickly, in human terms, it's they move before they're ready. Or they don't feel like they have to be ready, or they know that ready is a choice, or however you want to perceive it. But energetically, it is you realizing that you cannot wait for the last possible entry or exit point when the universe is like, wow, we have tried to send this person to him or her, whoever, 80,000 times through nudges. Go to that party, go to the store right now. go on this trip. Don't go here, go there. You should try pottery. We've sent a million messages, and those were all points where you could meet your person. But this person waited until last possible moment where we dropped him in so hard that he slapped her across the face, and she was like, wow, he's right there. Divine timing. It was divine timing when we met. And so that's what I really want you to understand about this concept of how people relate to divine timing, which I feel like is very different than what divine timing actually is. I would perceive divine timing, or how do you want to describe it? Divine timing being the most divine timing, experience of timing in your life, which is your what we would perceive to be highest timeline, and there are many realities of that, but the perception of what is the highest timeline is you actualized in your highest potential, living in love and abundance, and not in fear, not in resistance. That version of you, when everything is perfectly aligning and it drops in, which actually would be the first moment you feel the intuitive nudge. So do you see the difference? How most people relate to divine timing actually as it was the last possible moment you could meet that person. And so they came in a way where it's so obvious you couldn't miss it, versus divine timing. The divine definition of divine timing is actually that first moment of vibrational availability, that subtle energetic nudge, that subtle thing. It's like, this isn't correct. And I trust myself so deeply. I'm so in tune with the energy within me and around me and my soul that now I'm going to move. And when I move, energies open up really beautifully and effortlessly. And the unfolding of that timeline is aligned with ease, versus at the end, there's a lot of resistance to get there. But humans like the drama of the story and the struggle and the hardship. It's a different way to live. It's a different choice, and you get to make different choices. But this is a really important conversation to understand time, and a big piece of our evolution right now. Our evolution with consciousness is understanding timing in a different way. And for us to understand timing in a different way, we have to be willing to take responsibility for ourselves and our choices and our experience of timing differently. I have a lot more I could say on this, but I kind of want to wrap it up right there, because I want you to really reflect on what you perceive divine timing as. And if you look at moments in your life of that was divine timing, what was actually going on there? Was that the last possible moment or the first possible moment? One of the things that feeling energy, being in the field, seeing energy teaches you, it's that all of these really subtle things, when you're in that human 3D perspective, those things that are so subtle you almost miss them, or so subtle you think, I'll wait to see if that was it. Maybe I'm misinterpreting. When you perceive that from the lens of your soul, and when you drop all of the filters that we keep on ourselves for whatever reason, and you see in the realm of energy, that is that very subtle thing, the super loud bell. It goes back to the body, right? And is the body whispering, or is the body screaming? And how many of us wait until our bodies scream to listen? Those whispers are screams. When you drop the filters and when you fully open up your psychic knowing, your feeling, your seeing, your hearing, that most subtle thing from the human perspective is the very loud bell of go now. And the call to action from the divine is really starting to pay attention and to be conscious in your everyday and in the present moment, because there are constantly signs being sent to you. There are constantly opportunities. The divine wants to share that when you feel like you're waiting, there is no waiting. That if you are actually in tune and in sync with the energies around you, there is actually never a moment of waiting. You're always flowing in a direction. There's always a door that's opening. There's always a choice to be made. And so you're constantly in that stream of movement. And as I want to express it, I'm thinking about my life, and I'm thinking that is the truth. There's not a moment of waiting and doing nothing. Something is always moving, because those things that other people think are so subtle are so loud for me. And so when it's loud, yes, it requires action right now. And so I want you to think about, if you're telling yourself a story that there are no signs, that you're waiting around, that nothing's moving, you'll just see when it drops in. And it really is I say this with love, but this is the message that the divine wants to deliver to you. It really is that somewhere you're keeping yourself stuck, and that's okay if you want to hang out there. It's okay if you want to just float for a while and you don't want to move forward, but that's not actually living in alignment with divine timing. Inherently, if you're floating, you're in resistance somewhere. Inherently, if you're floating, you're keeping yourself floating in that place somewhere. And that's, again, there's no judgment. That's fine. But if you want your life to move forward, if you have that desire to attract in that person, to attract in that job, think about divine timing differently of, okay, I can decide now is the time, I'm energetically available. And so what's my next move? Because there always is a next move. And when you keep making those next moves, you're never bored because there's always a choice to be made. There's always an energy to flow into. There's always something that's happening. And then your experience of time is very different because you're busy. You're busy in it, moving along. And so it happens really quickly. But when you're waiting, you're really just pushing off the different stepping stones, the different instructions that you're going to have to follow at some point to get there. And then you get there and then you feel like, oh, it took me forever to get there. And so this is about the connection between our experience of time and the personal responsibility we get to take about how we perceive things and the beliefs that we have, and also our willingness to trust these things that the logical mind might say is really subtle, or we don't believe it, it's too good to be true, and start to really honor and respect every single subtle nudge as if it's a very loud bell ringing in your face. And that is how you can start to actually drop the resistance in your life and start to come into deeper harmony with the guidance of the divine and with the guidance of your body, because it is truly always talking to you. In fact, if you sit still and you start to notice all of the messages, they are so loud and there are so many, you won't even know what to do with them. Every day I write down all of the messages I got, the things that people said to me, what happened in my day, how my body is feeling. I write down every little subtle thing that most people overlook. And I have a list of about 100 different messages I got that day. God is talking all the time. We just need to listen. So my invitation for you is, what can you listen to a little bit more? And can you step into that co-creator seat for a moment and say, you know what, I'm actually going to pull this toward me. I'm actually going to take the nearest entry point. I'm going to choose that if you actually want it. And if you don't want to do that, then we come back to, well, do I actually want it? Because if you actually want something, then you will take the closest entry point. And that's something deeper to think about as well. Let me know if this lands for you on divine timing. It's something really important that wants to be shared right now, because we need to start to notice how we're using phrases in a fluffy way, but what does it actually mean when we look at the true definition of how consciousness interacts with our reality and our experience of reality. And when you start to free your mind in this way, a lot opens up really, really quickly. So that is my message for you today. Leave a comment and let me know how it lands, either on a recent Instagram post if you're watching on YouTube. And I will chat with you again next time.